And I thought, let's go and see what we have if we go ahead and use the same steps that the gardener uses. And Ernest Holmes, it was Emerson, who was saying that, dreams are great ideas, they're great thoughts, but they need execution. So we need to execute that idea that we want to move forward and create that beautiful mind garden that we know that we can create if we put the effort into our nature garden. So what do we do in this mind garden? The first step is pulling the weeds. These weeds are negative thoughts that stop us from going forward, that prevent us from reaching the potential that we really are. And just as with nature, it's a difficult job to pull out these mind weeds. Sometimes the weeds have deep roots, and we have to dig at them. I know a couple of weeks ago, I started in pulling weeds in my garden. And it took me 2 weekends to go ahead and get these weeds out. But what kept me going? It was the idea that when I get these weeds pulled, there's going to be that beautiful garden. So when I was working at the weeds, I didn't look at it thinking, oh, there's an unending amount of weeds. I could see only the beautiful garden. And this is what we need to do in our own mind, is to know that we get these negative thoughts out. We're going to have a beautiful garden, a beautiful mental garden. What do we do with these weeds once we pull them out? Well, if they're from nature, we put them in the recycle bin, and then they're chopped up into compost, and we bring them back the next year to enrich the soil. But what do we do with these mind weeds that we have? We release them. And as we release them, they change form. Their energy then goes off into what I would say mind fertilizer that we can then bring back next year to enrich our mind garden. Because as in nature, nothing is wasted. Everything is used. And nothing is ever lost. And nothing is ever totally gone. All it does is change form. So that's what we want to do with those mind weeds, is change the form and release them. And as we find that we can go ahead and release them, it gets a little bit easier as we can look back and think, oh wow, look at how much I've pulled out already. That encourages you to keep going on that. So we've cleared up the weeds. Now we're down to the soil. Now that soil has got to be prepared to receive the seeds. If the soil is not good soil, it won't produce good plants. And it sort of reminds me, when I was a child, they would talk about the parable of the location of the seeds. And I never thought of seeds as having anything to do with the mind. To me, they were just seeds. And if the seeds were scattered someplace where they weren't going to grow, the birds would come along and eat them. So they would fall upon the roadway, fall on the sidewalk. They could fall among the rocks and fall among the thistles. But the Bible tells us it's only the seeds that fall in the good soil that come to harvest time. So there it was. It keeps reminding me, and I kept going back thinking, okay, as a little child, that's how I thought. It's taken me a long time to become an adult to realize that these seeds are mind thoughts, but this is okay, I got there. So that's what I celebrated. I didn't celebrate all those years that I hadn't thought that. That was a defeating thought. So we get that, that ground all prepared, pulled out all these old roots, the very best that we can do. Now, there'll be times when you get through digging up all these weeds and you look back and you think, oh, darn, I missed one. Well, it's so much easier to just go back and pluck out that one and release it. And now you've got this soil, this beautiful soil where you're going to allow the seeds to be planted. Now, where are you going to plant the seeds? Remember that parable in the Bible. They need to be planted in the best location. Some of these seeds need to be planted in the sun and some in partial sun. But they need to be planted deep enough to support the growth of the seedlings as they start to sprout up. Because we don't want anybody coming along disrupting it, and we don't want the birds to come along and eat all these seeds. We don't want anybody coming in with ideas that are going to be like the bird, to nip up that seed before it can even start to grow. We want to give that seed, that mind seed, every opportunity to grow. Because remember, that mind seed is the Word of God in you. It's God speaking to you individualized. So each one of your thoughts are important, and you want to give them the best growth that you possibly can. So we've got them in there. We have them in the soil where they're growing. And then what do we do next? Well, with the gardener, he had to give it just the right amount of water. Well, we're certainly not going to water our mind seeds. But with the gardener, if he didn't water his seeds, the plants would wither, they'd become vulnerable to disease, and wouldn't grow, or would grow and be very spindly and unhealthy. And if he gave it too much water, the seeds would become all waterlogged, or they'd drown. So what do we have here that we can apply in our mind garden? We have to have balance. We have to have a balance to nurture the growth of these seeds. We have to sprinkle it with good thoughts and treat it lovingly. And don't dwell on it. Just sort of allow those thoughts to be. Because it's what we say when we give a treatment. We treat and then we release. And know that Spirit's going to come in there and take care of it. We do the same thing with the water. Spirit is the water on these seeds in our mind. Because we have released them knowing that they're already out there in the invisible. But it gets into balance. And this is where one of my favorite people, Troward, comes in. He's always talking about balance. And I thought, okay, here comes in this balance part. Too much of this or too much of that is not good. We're trying to get right into the middle, which is the best way that we can go ahead and protect our seeds. Is what we do, we almost like build a little fence around these seedlings so that nobody can come along and trample on them. And we protect them so that the little ground critters don't come in and nibble on the tender seedlings that are coming up. We want to go ahead and give it every chance we can to grow strong. Because every day, these little seedlings grow stronger. These little thought seeds grow stronger. So give yourself a chance to allow these thoughts to mature in your mind, knowing that each day they're growing stronger. And each day, Spirit is there sprinkling that metaphysical water on your seed plants. Along with that, we need to open up to our intuition, because that's God coming through, talking to you, and giving you directions on how to grow your mind garden.